If my rich dad were here today, he would say, bringing out your gift is about bringing out your greatness, not just what you are good enough at. Good to Great is filled with lessons essential for big and small businesses. In our study groups, each person seemed to find a lesson that was written just for him or her. For me, the lesson that hit me the hardest was the lesson that greatness is a choice. It is not about being gifted or talented or more fortunate than others. It's about a choice we all can make. Being a person who has been average and below average for most of my life, the idea that I had the choice to change all that was a message from the book that went straight to my heart and my soul. Overcome Your Resistance. The War of Art by Steven Pressfield is another book for anyone who wants to make the best of their lives. The War of Art is about the self-saboteur in all of us. Steven Pressfield identifies resistance as that force inside each of us that holds us back. I know this character named Resistance well, except in my case, my resistance comes in different characters with different names. In the morning, my resistance goes by the name of Fat Boy. As I awake, look at my clock and say, time to go to the gym, immediately Fat Boy says, oh no, not this morning, you're not feeling well. Besides, it's chilly outside. Go to the gym tomorrow. Fat Boy is the guy inside me that would rather eat than exercise. My resistance comes disguised in many different characters. I have lots of them. In addition to Fat Boy, another character is Lazy Husband. This character often says things such as, why didn't Kim do this or do that? Another resistance character that runs my life is Financial Slob, who is always saying, why check the numbers? After Financial Slob has his say, then Lazy Husband says, Kim, will you check these numbers? As you can tell, Fat Boy, Financial Slob, and Lazy Husband are close friends of mine. We are together every day. Pressfield calls it resistance. I call them my buddies. Steven Pressfield's book is about overcoming your resistance by tapping into your creative power, your spiritual allies, your angels or muses. I would say this book is essential for entrepreneurs. It is not a book for people who simply want to get rich quick. Like Good to Great, The War of Art contains many priceless lessons, yet there is one lesson that pertains directly to this subject of giving one's gift. It comes from a chapter entitled Professionals and Amateurs and says, aspiring artists defeated by resistance share one trait. They all act like amateurs. They have not yet turned pro. To be clear, when I say professional, I don't mean doctors and lawyers, those of the professions. I mean the professional as an ideal, the professional in contrast to the amateur. Consider the differences. The amateur plays for fun. The professional plays for keeps. To the amateur, the game is his avocation. To the pro, it's his vocation. The amateur plays part-time. The professional, full-time. The amateur is a weekend warrior. The professional is there 7 days a week. The word amateur comes from the Latin root meaning to love. The conventional interpretation is that the amateur pursues his calling out of love, while the pro does it for money. Not the way I see it. In my view, the amateur does not love the game enough. If he did, he would not pursue it as a sideline, distinct from his real vocation. The professional loves it so much he dedicates his life to it. He commits full time. That's what I mean when I say turning pro. Resistance hates it when we turn pro. An overnight success. Writing about the success of the Rich Dad series of books, a news journalist said, "This author is an overnight success. Only 3 other books in the history of the New York Times bestseller list have been on the list longer than Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad." Most authors write for years and write many books and never make the New York Times list. The words overnight success and author always cause me to chuckle. I do not consider myself an author, and I am certainly not an overnight success. I am simply someone who found my mission. I have been working on this mission for years and have partners who share that mission. Being an author is just one of the jobs I perform in order to fulfill that mission. I really wish I did not have to write. Ever since failing English in high school at the age of 15 because I could not write, I have had a deep aversion to writing. For years, I hated writing. It was the hardest thing I had to do. There are many other ways to communicate that are easier for me, and I would rather do, like audio or video recordings or live appearances. In spite of this, Rich Dad, Poor Dad has been a best-selling business book in America for many years. Lance Armstrong has won many Tour de France races, but his biggest battle was conquering cancer at the peak of his career. In comparison, if it's cold outside, I won't go to the gym. Armstrong's level of professionalism and love of his sport are an inspiration to us all, regardless of what our game is. As he said in his book, It's Not About the Bike, I was beginning to see cancer as something that I was given for the good of others. All I knew was that I felt I had a mission to serve others that I'd never had before, and I took it more seriously than anything in the world. It's not about the money. Another question I am asked by journalists is, why do you keep working? If you have all this money, why don't you just go on a permanent vacation? Just as Lance Armstrong states, it's not about the bike, for me, it's not about the money. It's about the mission. In 1974, seeing my poor dad sitting at home watching TV, a broken and broke man, I found my mission. Watching my dad sitting there, I could see the future. Not just for him, but for millions, maybe billions of people worldwide. In the next few years, by 2015, it will become more apparent that throughout the world, there are millions, maybe billions of people just like my dad. These are smart, educated, hardworking people who will need government support for food, shelter, and medicine. This is a worldwide phenomenon affecting every country in the world, even the richest of countries, such as the United States, England, Japan, Germany, France, and Italy. In 1974, I realized the problem was that too many people, like my dad, were depending upon the government for life support. My rich dad had seen the problem growing and that Social Security and Medicare were going to be massive financial problems for the United States and the world. I could see that the richest country in the world could become a country filled with poor people expecting the government to take care of them. In 1974, when my poor dad recommended, "Go back to school and get your PhD so you can find a job with good benefits," I found my mission. At the time, I did not know that I had found my mission. All I knew was that my dad's advice I used to listen to, now deeply disturbed me. Seeing my dad sitting on the couch watching TV, unemployed, smoking, and collecting his government benefits, I knew there was something terribly flawed in his advice. Times had changed, but his advice had not. I believe seeing my father in 1974 was seeing the future. Why doing what you love is not enough. Very often, I hear people say, I'm doing what I love. Also, I hear people say, do what you love and the money will follow. While this is good advice, there are also some flaws in the advice. The most obvious flaw is the use of the word I. One's true mission is about whom you love. It is not about you. A mission is about whom you do your work for. It's not about working for yourself. In his book, Lance Armstrong goes on to say, I had a new sense of purpose, and it had nothing to do with my recognition and exploits on a bike. Some people won't understand this, but I no longer felt that it was my role in life to be a cyclist. Maybe my role was to be a cancer survivor. My strongest connections and feelings were with people who were fighting cancer and asking the same question I was, am I going to die? It's not about you. Recently, a friend asked me to talk to his sister, an office manager who had just joined a network marketing company. He said, she read your books and has decided to take a leap into starting her own business with a network marketing company. That's good, I said. Would you mind talking to her? What could I say? He was a friend, so I agreed. During her lunch break, she came by to meet with me. So why did you join this company and decide to build your own business? I asked. Oh, I'm tired of the rat race. I'm not getting ahead at my job. So, after reading your book on the advantages of starting a network marketing business, the business school for people who like helping people, I decided to take the plunge. So, I gave notice at work and will be out on my own in a month. That's courageous, I said, acknowledging her. Tell me how you came to choose the network marketing company you're going to build your business with. Oh, I really like their products. Their training seems good, but I really liked their compensation plan. I can make a lot of money quickly. Okay, I said, reserving my comments about doing it primarily for the money. What are your plans? The conversation went on for about another half hour. There was not much to discuss since she had not yet started. To be fair to my friend, I suggested she call me in 6 months and let me know how she was doing. At that point, I thought she would have more real-world questions to ask. 6 months of failing. During the 6th month, she called and wanted to continue our meeting. This next meeting was not as pleasant. I'm not doing very well, she started. Nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody gets it. They just close their minds the moment I mention network marketing. How can I make any money if they don't listen? Have you attended the training sessions the company offers? I asked. No, I don't want to, she said angrily. All they do is pressure me to practice selling. I don't want to be pressured. They want me to bring my friends to meetings, and my friends won't come. Okay, I said quietly. Have you read any books on selling or how to influence people? No, I don't like to read. Okay, if you don't like to read, have you looked into a sales training course? No, all those guys want is my money, so I refuse to give them any. Okay, I said, so what do you want? All I want is to work a few hours a week, make a lot of money without hassles, and have the time and money to enjoy life. All right, I said, now beginning to chuckle to myself. So tell me what I should do, she said, flashing her frustration at me. Go see if you can get your job back, I suggested. Are you saying I can't build a business? She demanded. No, I am not saying that. So, what are you saying? She demanded. You're supposed to be the smart guy, the guy who writes all these best-selling books. Tell me what you see in me. I'm strong. I can take it." "Okay," I said in a more serious tone. "Have you noticed how many times you have used the word I?" "No," she replied. "Tell me how many times I have used the word I and what the use of it means to you." "Well, I heard you say, 'I'm not doing well. I don't want to attend training classes. I don't want to read. I refuse to give any money.'" "So I say I a lot. So what?" As gently as I could, I said, "Because building a business is not about you. It's about other people. It's about your team, your customers, your teachers, and how well you can serve them. You sound very self-centered, very me, myself, and I oriented." Obviously, she did not like what I had to say, yet she sat back, kept quiet, and listened. I could tell she had heard what I had said and was processing it. Composing herself, she replied, "But I really do not like to read. I really do not like going to training classes. I really hate rejection. I hate closed-minded people who do not get what I am offering them. I hate this emotional pain I am going through. I hate not having a paycheck." Nodding slowly, I softly said, "I understand. I have had to go through similar feelings. I, too, hate to read, hate to study, hate to train, hate to pay for advice, hate the long hours without pay, but I do it." "Why?" she asked. "Because I don't do it for me. My work is not about me. It's about them." "So you study because you want to do better for them, your customers?" "Yes," I replied. "Not just my customers. I study, train, and practice hard for their families, for their community, and for a better world. It's not about me or about the money. It's about being of service." "Well, I want to be of service too," she blurted out. "I'm trying to help people." "Yes, I can tell you are. You have a good heart. The problem is, you must first qualify to serve." "Qualify? What do you mean by qualify?" "Well, medical doctors spend years in medical school qualifying to serve their patients. I do not know of anyone who has quit a job as an office manager and the next day is in the operating room performing eye surgery. Do you?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "So that is why I need to read, train, and practice. It's not about me. It's about being better able to serve other people." Our discussion went on for about an hour more. She did have a very good heart and sincerely did want to serve people. She simply needed to take time to gain the skills required to be better at serving people. Explaining to her the differences between P thinking, A thinking, T thinking, and C thinking people, I told her I thought she was gaining invaluable P thinking people skills from her network marketing company. As she left, I said to her, "Dealing with people is the hardest part of any business." The conversation went to the book Good to Great, and we discussed how greatness was a choice, not luck or chance. To encourage her to continue, I said, "Your company is not training you to be good, but to be great at dealing with people. That is a priceless skill, and a skill essential to be of service to your fellow human beings. But you and only you can make that choice to be great. Most people are happy just to be good, because being good is all they need to serve themselves." As she left, she asked, "So not all people are in business to serve other people?" "That is my experience. Too many people go to work simply to make money. A few people go to work to be of service. Different people, different missions. In the next chapter, we will go into how to build a team and how to deal with different people with different missions. It is a very important chapter because people come to work for different reasons. If their reasons are not aligned to the mission of the business, the results are often chaos and losses of time and money. Many businesses fail simply because in business there are different people with different missions. The power of a mission. In Vietnam, I witnessed firsthand a third world nation beat the most powerful nation in the world simply because its fighting forces had a stronger sense of mission. I see the same thing in business today. We have all seen smaller entrepreneurial companies such as Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon blast past big, stodgy blue chip companies, making the young entrepreneurs far richer than older corporate executives climbing the corporate ladders. Today, while blue chip corporate executives are becoming millionaires, youthful entrepreneurs are becoming billionaires. As in Vietnam, it's not a matter of the size of the business. It's a matter of the size of the mission. That is why I have dedicated so much time to this subject. Earlier in this book, I wrote about the 3 10-year phases of my development. Once again, they are 1. 1974 to 1984, learning years. 2. 1984 to 1994, earning years. 3. 1994 to 2004, giving back years. In 1974, my mission was simply to master the BI triangle. My mission was to learn. It was a dark period of life. I was often broke and depressed. It was the mission that kept me going. There were months on end that nothing seemed to work, yet the memory of my dad sitting on his couch watching TV kept me going. I was not learning for me. I was learning for my dad and people like my dad throughout the world. Around 1980, my world became brighter. Money was once again rolling in. I had learned many lessons about the BI triangle, especially the 5 levels from cash flow to product. In 1980, we shipped our factories offshore because it was cheaper to manufacture in Korea and Taiwan. On one of our trips, I saw firsthand what a real-world sweatshop was. I saw kids stacked above kids on mezzanines, manufacturing my products that were making me rich. At the time, I was manufacturing nylon wallets, bags, and hats for rock bands. We were selling our legally licensed products at rock concerts and record stores throughout the world. I was back on top again, but the sight of those kids in sweatshops haunted me. I knew my days as a manufacturing entrepreneur were over. Besides, I realized my mission to learn was changing. I knew it was time to move on. In December 1984, Kim and I moved to California. That began the worst year of our life. I wrote about this period of time in the book Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. My mission was similar, but it had evolved. Now my mission was to find my gift and develop it. It was also to earn money and create wealth from my gift. Passion is different from love. Passion is a combination of love and anger. At that time, I was in love with learning and still angry at the school system. Taking my passion, Kim and I became students of education and how people learned. We spent 1985 traveling with different great teachers, such as Tony Robbins, and studying the way they taught. Once a week, we were helping Tony teach people to walk across 2,000-degree hot coals. It was a great education to help people go beyond their fears and their limiting thoughts. After a year with Tony and other teachers, Kim and I began to teach entrepreneurial skills along with Blair Singer, author of the Rich Dad Advisor books, Sales Dogs, and The ABCs of Building a Business Team That Wins, re-released as Team Code of Honor in 2012. Blair and I still laugh to this day about our first workshop. He and I flew to the island of Maui to do the workshop, and only 2 people showed up. Even though it was a dismal start for our new business, we went on to form the Business School for Entrepreneurs and Business School for Investors. 5 years later, in 1990, we were filling rooms with hundreds of people, teaching the business and investing principles of my rich dad. By 1994, Kim and I were financially free. Blair went on to form his own corporate training business. Most important, I had found my gift, which is teaching, but not the same kind of teaching that my poor dad was trained to teach. In 1994, I retired and began to work on developing the cash flow game and writing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Our third mission had begun to give back what we had been given in the form of financial and business education. Our mission was to serve more people, and once we did that, the money poured in like magic, almost from day one. Kim and I still chuckle about the credit card company that called us because we had too much business. After doing one talk over a weekend, orders started pouring in. The credit card company tried to shut us down because they were certain we were selling drugs or weapons because we had processed so much business after one event. The president of the bank told us, "I cannot believe a new business can generate so much cash so quickly." Little did he know that it was the power of the mission and the 3 types of money, competitive, cooperative, and spiritual money, that were causing the phone to ring. I sincerely believe the worldwide success of the Rich Dad Company is not due to Kim and me as individuals, but as people dedicated to our missions in life. When we founded the Rich Dad Company, we did not need to work. It was not about needing a job. It was not about needing money. It was about answering a higher calling. It was about doing a job that needed to be done. If it had been just about the money, there are easier things Kim and I could have done. If our success was luck, then it was spiritual luck. There is no other way to explain it. There simply has been too much magic and too much good fortune to be attributed to merely the combined business skills of the 2 of us. Stephen Pressfield, in his book The War of Art, says, "A process is set in motion by which inevitably and infallibly heaven comes to our aid. Unseen forces enlist in our cause. Serendipity reinforces our purpose." Lance Armstrong says, "It's not about the bike." Your mission starts at your core. Before you quit your job, remember the 3 kinds of money, and that one type of money is not better than the other. For example, competitive money is not better or worse than cooperative or spiritual money. Competition has its place in business. Competition keeps prices down and quality up. It keeps business people sharp and keeps us on our toes. Without competition, there would be fewer new products or life-changing innovations. Without competition, we would be approaching a socialist, centrally controlled type of economy. Without competition, there would be less need or incentive for entrepreneurs. If you are about to become an entrepreneur, your first mission is to master the BI triangle, especially the levels from cash flow up through product. If you do not learn the BI triangle and continually work on mastering the levels, and if you are not competitive, you might not survive. If you are not competitive, you will find it difficult to be cooperative and to work for cooperative money. In the game of business, it is tough being cooperative with poor people or poor companies. It's like playing football with a teammate who has a broken leg. As stated in an earlier chapter, the BI triangle actually applies to all 4 quadrants of the cash flow quadrant. For example, people in the E quadrant also have a BI triangle. If they are having financial challenges, it makes it easier to diagnose their financial challenge by simply looking at their private lives through the BI triangle. For example, many employees struggle financially simply because they are weak at the cash flow level. Even if you give them a raise, their weakness at that level will keep them financially poor. The Marine Corps did teach me that the mission of the organization starts at the core, in the soul of the organization. Without integrity to a mission, an organization does not have a soul. The Rich Dad Company team practices what we preach and lives our company mission. All employees are encouraged to start their own business or investment portfolios so that one day they can leave the company for good. We do not just want loyal employees. We want loyal employees who have a plan to become financially free and leave the company. We do not want our good workers to leave, but we celebrate their becoming financially free because that is the mission of the Rich Dad Company. So, before you quit your job, remember that your mission starts at your core, in your soul, felt in your heart, and spoken through your actions, not just your words. Rich Dad's Entrepreneurial Lesson Number 7. The scope of the mission determines the product. Chapter 7. How to go from small business to big business. Why do most small businesses remain small? I asked. Good question. They remain small because there are weaknesses in their BI triangle, answered Rich Dad. It's tough going from the S quadrant to the B quadrant if the BI triangle is not strong. After the wreckage. There is a saying that goes, hindsight is 20/20. While that is true, there is some hindsight that is clearer than others. Visual aids such as the BI triangle and the cash flow quadrant not only helped me see forward when designing a business, but also assisted me in seeing backward. After the crash of my nylon surfer wallet business, having the cash flow quadrant and the BI triangle as visual aids was like having eyeglasses or a magnifying glass when combing through the wreckage of the business. It was obvious that success and incompetence wiped us out, yet there were deeper, darker factors that caused us to crash. Being honest with myself and looking at the cash flow quadrant, it became crystal clear why we crashed. The real cause was youthful arrogance. Having a successful business early in life was like giving a kid a Corvette and a six-pack of beer and then saying, "Drive safely." In 1976, my best friend Larry and I were in the E quadrant, working for Xerox as salespeople. Because we were tops in sales, we thought we knew all the answers. In our business plan, we thought we could pull an Evel Knievel and jump the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle. That means we thought we would take a shortcut to the B quadrant. Instead of going from E to S, Our plan was to rev up our motorcycles and jump from E to B. Instead of climbing down the canyon from E to S and then climbing up the other side from S to B, we decided to leap the canyon. Even Evel Knievel was smart enough to make the leap with a parachute attached to his motorcycle. We didn't. Instead of being Evel Knievel, we looked like Wile E. Coyote chasing the roadrunner over the edge of a cliff and out into space before realizing there is nothing but air below his feet. Somewhere between 1978 and 1979, we realized we had nothing but air below us. We almost made it to the B quadrant. In fact, we touched the edge of it, but it was the weakness of our BI triangle that sent us crashing into the valley. It was not pretty, and it was painful. Today, every time I see a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon, I know how the coyote feels. Beep, beep. Crashes are good if you survive. Between 1979 and 1981, I felt like I was the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, inspecting the wreckage of an airplane. My partners had moved on to other businesses, and 2 new partners took their place. One of them, my brother John, was a strong business partner as well as a tremendous moral support. Together, we went through the wreckage and rebuilt a new but smaller business. We went from B back to S. In 1981, our downsized company entered a joint venture with a local radio station. Together with the radio station, we created a merchandising brand named 98 Rock. The star product was a black t-shirt with a splashed paint logo of red and white screaming 98 Rock FM Honolulu. In Honolulu, our 98 Rock shops had thousands of kids lining up to buy tens of thousands of t-shirts and other accessories. The product line soon went worldwide, doing especially well in Japan. Seeing a little 98 Rock shop in Tokyo with thousands of Japanese kids in line to buy the products brought smiles back to our faces, smiles that had not been there for a number of years. When I told Rich Dad about our worldwide success, he reminded me, "The process will give a glimpse of your future, but you must be faithful to the process." Although I was not out of the woods, I knew I was getting closer to my goal. The process, although tough, was working. The 98 Rock craze lasted about 18 months. It made a lot of money. It was through this one marketing campaign that I was able to pay back over $700,000 to my creditors and pay off my back taxes. At the end of the fad, I was financially back to zero. Although still without money, my BI triangle skills were stronger. My confidence was back. I had turned bad luck into good luck. I did not have to declare bankruptcy, and I had caught a glimpse of the good life, my future, at the end of the process. In 1981, an agent for the rock band Pink Floyd called. He had heard of our success with 98 Rock merchandise and wanted us to work with them on the re-release of their album, The Wall. Obviously, we jumped at the opportunity. Once again, our small company was growing into a big company. With this growth, the strength of our company's BI triangle was being tested again. Our joint venture with Pink Floyd's merchandise was successful. Soon, other bands came to us, and, without really planning it, our little company in Honolulu was solidly in rock and roll merchandising. When Duran Duran and Van Halen joined our list of rock bands, the business exploded. Simultaneously, around 1982, MTV was launched. That meant rock and roll was back, disco was dead, and once again our systems were overstressed. We were in the right place at the right time in the right business. The problem was, we could no longer keep up with demand. We also knew we could no longer produce products in America. The costs of government regulations, labor laws, and factory space were too much for a little company. In order to expand, it was much more economical to move our manufacturing to Asia. The three partners worked day and night expanding into Asia. It was about 6 months of hard work. Not 24/7, but at least 27. I was virtually living in New York or San Francisco. Dave, our other partner, was in Taiwan and Korea, and my brother kept the Honolulu operations going. Operating in time zones that spanned half the globe, we were constantly on the phone, before cell phones and email, staying in touch and building a bigger BI triangle. With an expanded BI triangle, the money once again poured in. Occasionally, I would stop in and see Rich Dad. During this period of time, we were not on the best of terms. He was still angry because he thought I had not listened to his advice just before the crash of the original wallet business. Although not happy with me, he was still very giving with his time and advice. Even when I reported that our new wallet business had been rebuilt and I had learned a lot from the process, he remained a little grumpy. In hindsight, rebuilding the business was a priceless experience. My two new partners and I had all learned a lot and had grown up a lot. We were less flaky. We were smarter business people, and our cash flow was the proof. Our new BI triangle was not leaking or collapsing. It was holding its own. One day, my partner Dave suggested I go with him to Korea and Taiwan to see our operations. Since I had only been in San Francisco and New York during the expansion period, I had not gone to Asia to see our factories. As stated in an earlier chapter, it was on this trip to Asia that I saw the kids in sweatshops, and my career as a manufacturer ended. Mission accomplished. On the plane ride back from Asia to Hawaii, I realized that my mission was accomplished. Sitting in my seat, I began looking back at the process. As if it were only yesterday, I remember deciding to join the Xerox Corporation to learn how to sell in 1974. My mind also brought back memories of the day in 1976 when my friend Larry and I decided to start the nylon surfer wallet business part-time. In 1978, I was #1 in sales at Xerox, and our surfer wallet business was being written up in GQ, Runner's World, and Playboy. Larry and I left Xerox to run our tiny business full-time. I recalled all the high times and then the crash. My emotions sank as I remembered how badly I felt when I told my family, my creditors, and the tax department that we were shutting the business down. I remembered the lessons from Rich Dad during this period. A smile crossed my face when I thought of Dave, my brother John, and I agreeing to rebuild the business and our success with 98 Rock, and then with MTV and rock and roll. Now the business was strong, and it was time to move on. My mind kept saying, "Stay. It's now time to make a lot of money. You're back on top again. Why leave now? You're just about to get rich. The hard work is done. Your dreams will come true." Yet, in my heart, I knew it was time to move on. Deciding to move on was tough, especially with the money beginning to pour in. I struggled for months with the conflict between my head and my heart. Many times when I received my paycheck and bonus check, I definitely wanted to stay. Yet, I knew my mission to learn the fundamentals of the BI triangle had been accomplished. I could now be competitive in the business world. The problem was, I did not like what I had to do to stay competitive. I did not want to employ kids in horrible conditions that would probably scar many of them for life. In late 1983, I let Dave and my brother John know that I was leaving the business. I asked for no financial compensation. I had received more than I wanted. Meeting Kim. Just as I was preparing to make these changes in my life, I met Kim. Still the disco duck of Waikiki, I had met her months earlier, but she would not have anything to do with me. It must have been the long-collared shirts and disco boots. It did not bother me, since Waikiki was full of beautiful young women. For some reason, after I returned from Asia, Kim came back into my thoughts. I asked her out again, and she turned me down again. This went on for 6 months. I would run into her, talk to her, ask her out, and she would turn me down. I would call her, and she would turn me down. I sent flowers, and she turned me down. Again and again, she turned me down. I tried every sales tactic I learned in sales training on her. I tried the puppy dog close, the Columbo close, the assume the sale and close, but none of them worked. Finally, out of tricks from my sales bag, I stopped being a disco duck salesperson and applied what I had learned from the marketing classes I had been taking at night. In marketing, a rule of thumb is to do your market research first. With my marketing cap on instead of my sales cap, I began asking around to find out who this woman named Kim really was. In marketing, it is called knowing your customer. The first person I asked was a guy who knew her from work. When I began asking questions, all he did was laugh. "You don't have a prayer," he said. "Do you know how many guys are after her? She has cards, flowers, and phone calls from guys like you all day. She probably does not know who you are." He was not helpful, so I kept digging. Finally, I was having lunch with a female friend of mine, and I mentioned I was not getting far on my market research project, codenamed Kim. Phyllis cracked up after she heard my story. "Don't you know who her best girlfriend is?" "No, I don't." Laughing hysterically, Phyllis said, "Her best friend is Karen, your old girlfriend." "What?" I said. "You're kidding me." "No, I am not," laughed Phyllis. Giving Phyllis a big hug and kiss, I ran out the door and back to the office. I had a phone call to make. To Karen. The split between Karen and me had not been the most pleasant, so I had some patching up to do. After I had made a few belated apologies, Karen listened to the story of my 6-month pursuit of Kim. She, too, laughed her head off. Finally composing herself, she asked, "So, what do you want me to do?" Taking off my marketing cap and putting on my salesperson's cap, I asked for what every salesperson is trained to ask for from a satisfied customer. I asked for a referral. "You want what?" screamed Karen. "You want a referral from me? You want me to recommend to her that she go out with you? You've got your nerve." "Well, that is why I was number 1 in sales," I said as a joke. Karen did not laugh. "Okay," she said, "I'll talk to her, but I warn you, that is all I am going to do. No more favors." Karen did talk to Kim and gave me an excellent referral. About 6 weeks later, our calendars finally cleared, and we finally had our first date on February 19th, 1984. A new process begins. Our date was a table overlooking the beach and a simple walk along a white sand beach with a bottle of champagne. I did not have much money, so that was about as romantic a date as I could think of for a good price. Sitting on the beach at the foot of Diamond Head, Kim and I talked until the sun came up. We had a lot of catching up to do. That night, she told me about her life, and I talked about mine. When the subject of work came up, I told her about Rich Dad and his lessons. She had been a business major in college and was very interested in Rich Dad's BI triangle and the process of becoming an entrepreneur. Sitting on the sand at the water's edge in the moonlight, talking to the most beautiful woman I had ever known about business was like being in heaven. Most of the women the disco duck had dated up to this point were not into business. Kim was. She was very interested. She shook her head when I told her the story of the nylon wallet business. I told her about flying high, and then the crash that followed. I told her about the kids in Asia, one stacked on top of another, 4 tiers of workers where there should only be 1 tier, inhaling toxic fumes from the paints we used. She nearly cried. Then I told her about resigning from my company because the mission was over. With that, she took over the conversation, saying, "I'm glad you're moving on, but what are you going to do?" Shaking my head, I replied, "I don't know. All I know is that sometimes you have to stop before you can begin again. So, right now, all I am doing is stopping." At that point, I told her about my dad who was still unemployed, taking odd jobs when he could find them. I told her about how I thought education was inadequate and not preparing kids for the real world, how schools were preparing kids to be employees, not entrepreneurs, teaching kids to expect a company or the government to take care of them once their working days were over. We then discussed the future, how Rich Dad envisioned a coming Social Security crisis, a medical crisis, and a financial crisis in the stock market, growing bigger and bigger as the baby boom generation aged. "Why are you concerned?" she asked. "Why do you think the coming financial crisis is your problem?" "I can't really say," I said. "I know that the world has a lot of problems. Problems with the environment, diseases, enough food, shelter, and so on. But for me, this problem of money, poverty, and the gap between rich and poor interests me the most. I feel it in my stomach and in my heart." The conversation shifted to Dr. Buckminster Fuller and my studies with him, and how he shared the same concerns about the financial system as my rich dad. I did my best to explain to her how Dr. Fuller said the rich and powerful were playing games with money, keeping the poor and middle class constantly at the edge of financial crisis. I also told Kim about Fuller's saying that each of us had a purpose to our lives, that each of us held a vital piece of the puzzle, and our job was not just to make money, but also to make this world a better place. "It sounds like you're looking for a way to help people like your dad and people like those kids in the factory," said Kim. I said, "That is pretty accurate. While I was in that factory, I decided it was time for me to work for the kids, instead of having the kids working for me. It is time for me to make the kids rich, rather than just myself rich." The sun was breaking over the ocean. The young surfers were out testing the smooth, glassy waves. It was time to get ready for work. We had been up all night, but were full of energy. We have been together ever since. Finding my passion. In December 1984, Kim and I moved to California. As I have stated many times in my writings, this began the hardest period of both of our lives. The business opportunity we thought we were part of did not pan out. That left us without money, sleeping in our car for a few nights. It was a time that tested our commitment to our new business and to each other. California was the hotbed for new models of education. Many of the hippies had grown older and were teaching seminars on some very strange and interesting subjects. The common themes were open your mind, change your paradigms, and break through your limiting realities. Kim and I attended as many seminars as we could, gaining new ideas and observing different teaching techniques. Earlier in this book, I wrote about attending Bob Bondurant's School of High Performance Driving, and also about working with Tony Robbins and teaching people to walk across 2,000-degree coals. As you may already know, I do not like the traditional system of education. I didn't like being taught by the fear of failing, learning to memorize all the right answers, and being afraid of making mistakes. In school, I always felt I was being programmed to do only the right things and to live in fear of living life. In school, I often felt like a butterfly caught in a spider's web, with the spider wrapping its web around and around me until I could no longer fly. The kind of education I was looking for was an education that taught people how to break through their fears, education that would help them discover their own power within so they could walk on fire or drive a high-speed Formula One racer. The more I studied these techniques and how we learn, how the mind works with our emotions, and how the mind affects our physical abilities, the more I wanted to learn. I became fascinated by the subject of how we as humans learn. I discovered why I loved the Marine Corps so much. I loved Marine Corps training and flight school because it too was about going beyond fears and limiting thoughts. The Marine Corps was the perfect learning environment for me. The learning environment was tough and rigorous, requiring my body, mind, emotions, and soul to get through the programs. In the Marine Corps, memorizing the right answers is not enough. Just as in the world of business, the Marine Corps is about results, not reasons. It is about actions, not words. It is a learning environment that insists that the mission be first, the team second, and the individual last. It is a learning environment that taught me to fly rather than a learning environment that clipped my wings. Breakthrough learning. It was dawning on me that what we were studying was what I came to call breakthrough learning, the type of learning that is powerful enough to cause a transformation, a paradigm shift of reality, much like how a chick must feel when it finally breaks through the shell of the egg. During one of the learning seminars I attended, I learned about Ilya Prigogine, a person who was awarded the Nobel Prize for his research on dissipative structures. To put it into as simple an example as possible, his research proved why a child will climb on a bike, fall off, climb on, fall off, and then suddenly be able to ride. Again, in the simplest of terms, under the extreme stress of falling down and getting up again and again, the stress of the process causes the child's brain to reorder. The brain goes from not knowing how to ride a bicycle to being able to ride a bicycle forever. To me, his research verified why people who do well in school may not do well in the real world. There are many people who know what to do, but cannot do what they know. Like my dad, once they fall down, they stay down and say, "I'll never do that again." Instead of pressing on with increasing stress and frustration, they back off to reduce the stress. In many ways, it is like the chick remaining in its protective shell. As Prigogine summarized, stress is the way intelligence grows, or, as Rich Dad would say, stay with the process. How fast can we learn? Another person whose work I researched was Georgy Lozanov of Bulgaria, the pioneer of what is now called superlearning. Although I never took one of his classes, it is reported that he was able to teach people a complete language in 1 or 2 days. Obviously, traditional academics discredit him and his work. I began experimenting with his techniques and found out that they really do work. One reason I disliked school so much was simply that the pace was too slow. It took too long to learn too little. Combining different teaching techniques increased the speed of learning, reduced boredom, and resulted in greater long-term retention. I began to become excited about education. What I liked most about what I was discovering was that it did not matter if you were an A student or an F student. With this method of teaching, all it took to learn was the desire to learn. Finding my passion. Rich Dad had said to me years earlier that once you complete a process, you take the best with you and leave the rest behind. You then move on to the next process. As Kim and I were going through this learning period, Rich Dad's words began to make sense. Suddenly, it dawned on me that I was beginning the best of several processes in my life. I had my experience from the process of going to school, which I really hated. Next were my experiences from the process of being a marine pilot. Then I had my experiences from learning to be an entrepreneur with my nylon wallet business. As tough as that nylon wallet process was, I did have many great experiences to take with me. And now, actually becoming a student of how people learn, all my past experiences were coming together. My often disorderly life was beginning to make sense. Around August 1985, I found my passion. My next business was forming in my mind. From 1986 to 1994, Kim and I ran an organization that offered the Business School for Entrepreneurs and the Business School for Investors. Instead of your traditional business school, this business school had no prerequisites. We did not require scholastic records. All that was required was the will to learn and the time and money for the courses. Employing the techniques we had learned, we were able to teach people the basics of accounting and investing, normally a 6-month course, in 1 day. Instead of talking about business, the class actually built a business touching on all parts of the BI triangle. Instead of talking about team building, each business team had to train for a triathlon. Instead of one person finishing first, it was the team that finished first that won. I do not know if you know how hard it is to get 15 people of different ages, different genders, different levels of fitness, and different mindsets to compete as a team in a contest of swimming, biking, and running. Some of the contests reminded me of scenes from Vietnam, where team members were carrying other team members across the finish line. Of course, to be a real business school, we bet money. Every participant put money in the pot, and it was winner take all. A winning team of 15 could walk away with as much as $50,000 in prize money. At our business school for investors, instead of talking about investing, we actually would build a stock market trading floor. The different teams would represent different stocks and money managers. As market conditions changed, the teams had to adjust their investment strategies. Again, at the end of the school, the winning team walked away with the money. In 1993, although the business was successful and profitable, I knew it was once again time to move on. In the summer of 1994, Kim and I sold our share of the business to our partner and retired. The passive income generated from our investments was now greater than our expenses. We were finally out of the rat race. We weren't rich, but we were financially free. In my book, Rich Dads Retire Young, Retire Rich, you will see on the back cover a picture of Kim and me sitting on horses on a hill overlooking a crystal blue ocean. That vacation on a private island in Fiji was our reward for retiring early. Kim was 37 and I was 47. Know when to stop. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins does a whole piece on knowing when to stop. Reading his book in 2004 took me back to the times when I also stopped in 1984 and 1994. There was no clear signal, no sign from God saying it's time to stop. Each time, there was simply a moment when I knew the process I was in had come to an end. It was time to stop and wait for the beginning of the next process. Many times I meet business people who want to stop but can't stop. They cannot stop for different reasons. One common reason is that their BI triangle is weak. To cover up for the weaknesses, the owner often has to work harder or longer to make up for the weaknesses. Another reason is that the owner cannot afford to stop. Again, this is a symptom of a weakness in the BI triangle. Another common reason is that the owner, although successful, continues to work because he or she does not know what to do next. According to Jim Collins, a person may need to stop first, take some time off, and then look for the next thing. That is what I did. I simply stopped, let the dust settle, and waited a few years to see what would happen next. The more people you serve, the more effective you become. From 1984 to 1994,